Okay, next up, we're on the subject of Internet of Eyes. I want to invite up our panelists for visual sensor networks will empower businesses and humanity. We've got Gaile Gordon, the Senior Director of Technology of Enlighted. Come on up. We've got Chris Rill, who's the CTO and co-founder of Canary, and also Jan from NVIDIA, who is the Director of Visual Computing and Research. Why don't you guys go down that way, any one of those? And we're going to have a 35-minute session, hopefully very interactive. In the end of all of our panels and firesides, there'll be opportunities for questions from the audience. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Come on, you guys can do better than that. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Are you guys awake? Hello, good morning. They're there. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us. You heard and saw my recent article, but before we jump into that, I'd love to hear 2 sentences from each of you. What do you do at your company, and what does the company do? Gaile, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so I'm at Enlighted. Enlighted introduces dense sensor networks into commercial buildings through
Move the chair
lighting.
forward.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So we introduce dense sensor networks into commercial buildings through lighting. We use the sensor networks to control how much energy is used by the lighting, which is what pays for that venture. But it also produces interesting data sources which are used for HVAC control and space planning. I've been there since January, and I work with the CEO on the next generation of sensors and applications that run on that network.
Jan.
Right. My name's Jan Kautz. I lead the Visual Computing Research Group at NVIDIA. That is to say, I do research with my team on computer vision and machine learning. NVIDIA probably doesn't need a lot of introduction. You all probably know that we build graphics cards. That's what we're known for. But more recently, we use them more as more general accelerators. So we sell them to all kinds of markets, including self-driving cars, the cloud, and so on.
How you doing? My name is Chris Rill. I'm one of the founders and CTO at a company called Canary here in New York City. And we build devices that protect your homes and other environments. So we've packed an entire security system, an HD camera, microphone, and other life safety sensors into a device about the size of this bottle of water. We connect once to AWS, and we send you alerts when we detect anomalies within your environment. And you can control this system all from your smartphone.
So one of the things I love about it is a very diverse panel from 3 different, totally different perspectives, and that can be challenging, but it's also, there's going to be a lot of synergies. Gaile, why don't you kick it off and tell us a little bit about what's a smart commercial building?
So the primary thing that makes a building smart is that it has sensors, and it has a way of reacting to what's going on in the environment. So using, for instance, where the people are in the building to control at a very fine degree how much energy is used by the lighting, and also how much light is coming in from the windows to change the dimming levels, etc. But more than that, it's a source of data that's used to study what the behavior patterns in the building are, which is a really interesting thing for other applications.
Like for what?
For space planning, for instance. So to make sure that you're using your building to its best efficiency, that your conference rooms are being used, that they're sized appropriately. And then I think going forward, there's going to be a lot of new interesting things that we can do with the network that's already there, paid for through the energy savings, to do things like asset tracking, indoor location, lots of really, really interesting things I think that people will find valuable to their daily lives.
And so mostly it's is the premise in the beginning in the buildings that it's a ROI, it's a savings, but then in addition it's other valuable opportunities, or what's the main ROI for a building to start using these sensors?
The energy savings that is introduced is about 75%.
Okay.
So it's a no-brainer,
right,
as opposed to previous applications which studied where people were in the building, which had to first pay for putting that network up there. And sometimes that was obvious in terms of its value, sometimes it was not. But in this case, it's completely obvious. The money is immediately covered through the energy savings, which gives a really interesting business model to figure out what else to do with the platform that's there.
Right. So Chris, take it away from there. So evolution of the sensors in commercial buildings, you're obviously more focused in the home. Tell us a little bit about some of the sensors on, in addition to the camera, that are on the Canary devices.
Sure. So when we started designing Canary about 4 years ago, we knew that video and audio is so important because of our smartphones and the fact that I've been looking at these really crisp images. And we wanted to give a better picture of what was going on within the home. And that's really the things that you can't see, especially when you're not in that environment. And so the temperature, humidity, and air quality were really important for us to really understand the context of that environment. And for situations where you're monitoring, say, an elderly parent or a child, understanding their comfort and understanding the well-being of that environment goes far beyond, video and audio. And that's one of the reasons why we included those additional sensors, so that you almost were telepresent in those environments that you were monitoring.
So as a co-founder, why did you start this business? And I'm sure there's been some surprises in the technology challenges. Why did you start it in a short sentence or two? And then what's the biggest surprise once you started connecting all this data, because it relates to the signals that are either useful or not?
Right. So for me, it comes from personal experience. It's about 6 years ago now. Wow. The time is flying by. About 6 years ago, my apartment was broken into while I was living abroad. And, I sought a system to monitor my apartment. And like any engineer, I went to the store to look for something that I kind of put in my home. And it was a local hardware store. There was nothing that you could simply buy and place in a corner of your home. And so I bought these sensors you stick on the windows and doors. And I hacked together a camera and a server in the cloud. And that was my security system. But today, companies like Canary are enabling everyone to do that. Not everyone's an engineer. Not everyone has the resources to go and put that system together. And so that's one of the reasons why I got connected with my co-founders, Adam and John, and why I'm so passionate about using technology to understand what's going on in environments, because I forever have that baggage because of the trauma in my life. On the question about surprising, I would say it's been so surprising to see how hard it is to build a consumer product company, not just a device, but to have it be available and working at the quality it needs to work all day, every day. And I think that's something, and especially something that I'm passionate about, which is security, which is securing these products at scale, because I'm actually terrified of the Internet of Eyes, because I know that it's not just about the algorithms, but it's also about the security of the information that these algorithms are analyzing.
Jan, so you're kind of perfectly sitting here on the panel in between both of these opportunities. I like how you orchestrated that. So tell us some use cases that you're working on today that will relate to both of these, and maybe one that you're most excited about in working on with your team.
Right. So we recently started working on stuff which really relates to both use cases.
Can you hold the mic up a little higher?
Sorry. And that is using visual sensors to do activity and action recognition in videos. So one of the use cases at home might be you have lots of cameras in your home, and now you might be able to monitor what's going on remotely. For instance, you have an elderly parent that you care for, and you're not at home, and your parent falls. You wouldn't know, but your sensors are able to recognize that your parent fell, call the ambulance directly. Those are use cases which wouldn't be possible otherwise. So those are the things I think that will make a big difference in people's life in the future.
Is that something that's possible right now, or are we talking 5 years out or 8 years out, or without giving away the secrets? How soon is this? Because Chris is smiling and says, "I want to use that one."
When can I have it?
Exactly. Okay, so
it's a question of robustness, right? So should we?
How do you define robustness?
Yeah. How many sort of false alerts are you willing to? Yeah.
So Chris, how many false alerts are you willing?
Oh man. Well, as an industry, security is 99% wrong. So, there's a very low bar that you need to meet. But,
So you want it today, is what you're saying?
Today.
You're ready.
All joking aside, we've seen with the application of computer vision that we've been able to reduce false alarms by up to 80%. And it continually gets better as we get better labels and better data to train our models. So I 100% agree that false alarms, with that, the first time you freak out because you think your mother or father falls, you're going to cry wolf, and eventually you're going to shut the system off. And that's what traditional security has kind of been having to deal with for years.
So there's still some ways to go.
Okay, give us another use case while you're on the hot seat. Give me another use case that you're really excited about.
I think the other one is self-driving cars, and I think that's going to be a big use case for sensors. So it's not just visual sensors, like in your case. Yeah, there will be additional sensors on cars, but it will be a big change the way we live as well. So in 10 years' time, yeah, everybody will have.
Okay, so today, most cars that are on the road, how many sensors are in the car?
There's still a lot of sensors.
Roughly, what do you think?
There's radars, ultrasound.
Are there 10? There 20?
10.
Okay. In 10 years or 15 years, how many will be in the car? Or just one controlling more?
No, there will be more sensors. There is disagreement which ones and how many. There will be more, but which ones exactly is unclear. I'm betting on cameras and radar, not LiDAR, because I think, to make your car look ugly, because they're big and bulky.
Just because of a look factor?
Yeah, no OEM wants to put a big spinning LiDAR on top of their car.
Right, okay.
It doesn't need to spin.
It doesn't need to spin. Right.
There was a Kickstarter that did a small LiDAR unit, about $200. I'm not sure how it did. Anyone back that?
There's a bunch of them working on it.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say there will be 3D sensors on the car.
Yes. Which form they take is a question.
What are the options? Because a technical audience here, so we're on a technical first day.
It could be stereo cameras. That's one way. I mean,
Okay.
LiDAR is the other way. You might just need more. You might just need more of them if you don't have a spinning LiDAR. But you could do that.
So, Gaile, talk to us a little bit more of the technical side for the very technical folks in the audience, because it is our first technical day that we want to deep in. What is the capacity of the sensors you have now, and talk to some of the challenges that you're seeing today and in the near future.
So for Enlighted, the sensors that we have now are relatively simple sensors. They're based on thermal data, ambient light, temperature, things like that. And they're already quite powerful. But the challenges, I think, that we see, lighting has to be extremely interactive. And all of the computation that you're going to be doing is local. So the big challenges are doing the processing locally so that when you walk into a room, it reacts quickly. And when your network is down, if you happen to have a network interruption, your lights are still working. So that's processing on the edge is probably the biggest issue. And security, I think, is the next one. You don't normally think of hacking lights, but that can have very, very broad impact. You don't want your smart building system to be hacked, but you also want people to be able to have personal control over their environment. And so the push-pull there is another huge issue that we have. And I think getting more advanced sensors into our networks at a cheap enough and pervasive enough level is the next challenge.
So you're sitting very close to somebody that might be able to influence that. So what would you ask for?
It has to be cheap.
Discount. Yeah.
I think that's the primary issue, right? For the price point that we're currently at, you have to be able to perform at least the tasks that you can do today better.
So just for perspective, I mean, how many sensors are on the Canary? How many visual and how many total?
So we have about, well, depends what you consider visual, but...
your definition.
So camera, so we've got one.
Okay, so anything that can see thermal, see anything that's not actually a camera as we know it.
Yeah, correct. We have one camera.
Okay.
And then for seeing, we've got many different sensors. So we have about half dozen sensors that we use. Some of them we use for user value, like our temperature and humidity, but also ambient light sensing, so we can turn on night vision and other such features. But the main ones that the user can see, or I would say see in our app, are the camera, temperature, humidity, and air quality.
And talk to us a little technically about how do they talk to each other? Are they triggering actions locally on the device? Are they communicating back with the cloud? Or how is the smartness connected?
Sure. So today we leverage the sensors on device to change the internal state of the Canary device itself. We have algorithms that interpret the visual data to try to understand at a very low compute, because the Canary device only has about, since we're talking tech today, only has about 400 megahertz of computational power. So you can't really do a lot there. And so we try to understand what's going on in the Canary device visually, and then we upload that to the cloud for further contextual analysis to try to understand whether we have people, pets, or just background noise like a shadow or a light change. then from there, if we do detect that there's something of interest for you, we will send you a notification and let you know what's going on. Some of the other sensors that we use that are really about understanding the environment are temperature and humidity. If the temperature dips or if the temperature spikes or the humidity changes more than between 30 and 50%, which is really the comfort zone for the home, we'll send you a notification and say, hey, we see that your humidity is low. From an air quality standpoint, that's another whole bag of worms. What is air quality? Is it a pollutant? Is it carbon dioxide? I'm sure people in offices really want to understand what air quality is. And so that's really a qualitative sensor for us to really understand, is the air changing? And so things like cigarettes and cooking actually influence that. But today, it's still really hard for us.
Cooking in the home, you mean?
Oh, yeah.
When the steak smells really good, it affects Canary?
Yeah, I'll get an alert sometimes that says your air quality is very bad, which for me is actually a good thing.
So now so that brings up the perfect segue of, will it tell you when that steak is ready, medium rare?
We're working on it. R&D for us. One day. There are connected frying pans.
So that's kind of where, that's the interesting things that I think the connection of different signals, not only from Canary, but from the phone and other things that maybe interact with Enlighted or other companies, where the APIs that we are used to online are then going to be becoming more the APIs of Internet of Things and Internet of Eyes. So give an example of what would excite you.
I think that's the opportunity, really, is the synergy for playing bingo today. The synergy between all of these different signals. Today, I would say we don't do a really good job of integrating all of the different signals in your home and all the different signals that are publicly available to add the right context. So one thing that really excites me that I don't know if I've talked about this publicly, I have talked to some of you about this, but is using the accelerometer on Canary. I mean, I believe that we will have the largest seismic activity detection system in the world because of the number of units we have deployed, but we haven't yet start looking at that accelerometer data and correlating that with the seismic readings that we get from the different government agencies around the world. But I would say that if from an interactive perspective with all of these other companies, we have an integration with Wink, and they're an OS for the home. You can control your lights and your thermostat and add a few different sensors. And so we have an integration with them. And surprisingly, there are a lot of people who have started to integrate with Canary and with Wink. And that's something that we're not super focused on because we feel like the opportunity for us is to empower people with data, meaningful insights from the environment around them. And the control of things is really just a small tangential niche that we're eventually going to get to. But there are companies like Apple and Google and Samsung, and they're all fighting over your light switches and your refrigerators and all those other things in your home that you may or may not have. But the information in your home, everyone has that, and everyone should have access to that so they can make decisions about kind of the changes that go on.
So, Gaile, similar to Chris, give us a perspective in the photograph that was in my presentation that came from Enlighted, which is the heat map of the office. A perspective of how many sensors are there that you guys are part of the network, and is that going to exponentially increase, or are sensors? Next question, shortly you'll hear is it going to decrease but have more power, so you don't need to have zillions? I mean, so give us a perspective.
So the Enlighted network is basically spaced every 10 feet. So
Okay.
there's a sensor package every 10 feet in a grid around the
Okay.
facility, because every fixture essentially has a sensor package in it. So it's very dense. However, there are other things in the office as well, and RF is one of the big things that is also intriguing. We're here talking about visual technology, but we also have to understand that the sensor fusion problem, a sensor fusion solution will be very interesting. You can do a lot of things that traditionally the vision community has tried to do only with vision sensors, but now that everyone is carrying around a very powerful computing device with radios on it, a lot of things like indoor location can also be either done entirely or augmented with RF as well.
So just as an example for those that are not technical in the audience, when you say sensor packages, what does it look like? Is it a little box? Can we see it? Is it very small? What is
Yeah, so the Enlighted fixtures, you can barely see it. It's probably about the size of a dime is what you see. So it's not very, very noticeable.
I assume they're going to get smaller, which brings me to the question of, when will these be painted? When will these sensors be painted on the wall so you actually can't see them? So that I'm sure Gaile's company would love to network the paint wall with sensors inside, thousands of sensors inside of them, and they can actually talk to Canary.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, Apple patented the 2mm camera, so you can place lots of cameras if they're the size of 2mm. I mean, you can easily make cameras like you said, the size of a dime, and place them all over your house. Yeah, that will be possible. There are questions about, I think security. That becomes a real issue at that point. Do you want to stream all this data to the cloud? I would be very hesitant to stream, from my hundreds of cameras that are in my house to the cloud.
Well, what's the okay? Let's talk about it for a second. I mean, it's a big issue. What's the difference between streaming 2 cameras or 1,000 cameras? Aside from on a security level, I mean, it's either secure or it's not.
Right. I think it's the more cameras you have, the more they see. Right. So if you place it just in your living room,
it's less about the vantage point of how many you have. So if you know where your sensors are or cameras are in the house, you can do the things you shouldn't do in a different room. But your issue is if they're everywhere.
If they're everywhere. If I want a smart house, right, I want to see everywhere in my house, so I won't have any blind spots, right? I don't want my elderly parent to fall in the one blind spot in my house.
Right. So you can't have both. I mean, you got to have them everywhere, and you
process it at home.
Oh, is that going to happen?
I think so.
You think so, Gaile?
Yeah, I think it always.
So what will be processed at home and kept at home, in theory, safer, which it really isn't if it's connected to the internet, versus on the cloud, which is the same thing?
Well, I think one of the things we've got to think about is the data ownership, right? Who owns the data? And I think in 10 years, you might see the cameras not being in the environment, but on you, right? Because when you own it, when you control the cameras, you own the data, and then the question is a little bit easier to ask.
That's right. Chris?
I was going to add that the companies that are building these products should build in privacy and control so that if you don't want cameras on, you should be able to turn them off and trust that they're off. But I mean, there are other sensors that you can put around your home that still respect your privacy, trying to understand if someone falls. Well, there are other types of cameras that you may not really care necessarily about the information and if it's going to the cloud. But I do agree that, when we look at, edge computing, that as semiconductors become less expensive and consumer product companies can put more compute at the edge, that allows us to do some very interesting things, both respecting privacy and providing the value and context that you need from these signals.
We got about 8 minutes left, so we're going to keep on talking here. Who has questions in the audience? Raise your hand. We've got mics that are going to be passed back there. But there you go. We're ready already. Let's dig in. Go.
Hey. My name is David Rose from Ditto Labs in Boston. Hey, I have a quick question about Canary. Once you have all these perches in people's homes, do you send video to any other cloud-based APIs for analysis, or do any of your competitors?
We do not. There are many competitors now. We've been around for 4 years, so people kind of got word of us on Indiegogo a couple years back. So I don't know about any other companies that are sending their data to other third-party APIs. I do know that there are other even in this room, there are other companies that do analysis to try to add context to video, which we do in-house.
Gotcha. Is that because of latency concerns, or why wouldn't you send data to other cloud-based APIs for other services?
I mean, because as a company, we do everything in-house, or we try to do everything in-house, and so we have a computer vision team, and we want to make sure that that's a defensible intellectual property that we have, so that if you're using a third party, you're gonna have to pay for that. So that's
gotcha. So you have a non-invented here problem.
Part of that?
Nothing. Just a secondary question is since you do have cameras in the homes, do you see that there's an opportunity to doing other services like interior design consulting, or bring my cleaner around, or give me diet coaching, based on the things that you might know about behavior in the home?
I mean, not in the near term, we're really focused on the security, value proposition. What's going on in my home? Are my kids okay? Is my pet okay? Aging in place type monitoring, make sure that my parents are okay. In the future, maybe, but really there's so much to do in the security field that I don't see us going into that in the near term.
Who else? Okay. You'll have more chances later. Who else? Has anybody have questions? One of the things they say at this point is that one of the biggest challenges of any conference is everybody wants to meet other people. And I always feel that when nobody asks questions, it's impossible to know who you are. But those that ask the smartest, most interesting questions will inspire those other people to go find you later. There you look at that. It always works. It's amazing. It's just a very simple statement that just connects.
Thank you very much. I'm Patrick Gill from Rambus. I'm a computational optical research scientist. We're developing, a little bit of shameless self-promotion. We're developing a new kind of sensor that will not produce photographic quality of monitoring a wide angle sort of in visual space, but may be able to address some of the kind of privacy questions you might have.
So what's the question?
So the question is, would it be worthwhile for companies like you to have some kind of sensor that's of intermediate resolution, so much more resolution than a PIR sensor, for instance, and yet would not be able to read the text of documents you're working on or be able to identify people by face? Is that a pressing concern that you folks are seeing from the industry of providing privacy against facial recognition kind of data and snooping in case your devices are hacked?
Gaile, Chris?
Yes, I mean, we should talk. There are places that cameras just aren't meant to go right now, like bathrooms and other places where, there's an expectation of privacy. And so with, I would say, different types of sensors, perhaps that fits in the kind of the obligation you have to create private environment in your home, for instance. And that's something that I'm actually really excited about, because there are places that our current Canary cannot go, and we want to make sure that we're able to monitor all environments, but do so responsibly.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that beyond, I don't know about your product, but thermal data, 3D data, there's a lot of types of data that can be used to understand, occupancy and what's going on in a room that are not really invasive of your privacy.
So Jan, tell us, you mentioned in emails with me, one of the aspects that you guys are working on is gesture, and that's a big project. And so give us some use cases of that, what you're working on that you can share, and how does it relate to this topic? Right.
So gesture recognition is something we've been working on for a while now. So the first use case was in-car user interfaces. So if you buy a BMW 7 Series, it already has a gesture recognition interface. And what does it do? It's very limited. You can sort of take a phone call, I think stop playing music, things like that. So it's only 5 or 6 different. So what do you do to take the phone call? You point to it? I think you make a specific gesture. I forget what it was. Okay. So you point to it. So there's a sort of a cube in space where you gesture, and then it recognizes whatever gesture you did. But it's only 5 or 6 different. So those people I see doing that are not crazy. They're not crazy. They're talking to their car. They're gesturing to their car. Yeah. Okay. So we have a system that allows for more gestures, and you can add new gestures on the fly, and it's more reliable than the BMW one. The challenge here is that for user interfaces, you really don't want latency. Like when you press a button, you want immediate feedback, right? You don't want to wait half a second. The same for gestures. If you make a gesture, and if it takes half a second for anything to happen, you never know. Did it work? Did it not work? So you want immediate feedback. So, and that's actually quite tricky for this type of interface, because you don't know, is the gesture ending? Has it ended? Is it still ongoing? So you need smart algorithms to be able to do this very quickly without any latency. And that's something we have. And it's actually related to action and activity recognition videos. There's similar problems. The gesture is slightly easier because it's more specific. So there's only, say, 20 gestures, so it's easier to know what there will be. Got it. Any more questions from the audience, and also questions you guys have for each other? You've got 3 different opinions here that you can ask tough questions, and we'll see if we can get answers. Go.
Hi, you guys all have touched on the security industry in many ways. Do you see any trends that are going to get the security industry to use extra sensor data? Stereo cameras, rangefinders. FLIR, I guess, is doing some infrared stuff. But is there any is there any hope on the horizon for the very traditional security camera, mono camera?
So maybe just jump in with a quick. There's security, and then there's a lot of other applications which are very related. Retail, for instance, the retail environment has always been very interested in slightly different data compared to security. For instance, they want to know whether there's adults or children in the space, which is a classic use of 3D sensors. So it's something required, since you happen to mention 3D.
Rick.
So I've been working on a project called the Human Face of Big Data for the last couple of years, and one of the things we found in the course of doing this project was that General Electric and GE were working on a series of products aimed at aging at home. I'm curious if the Canary, one of them was called the magic carpets. You install a carpet in the home of your loved one, and it actually builds sort of a model of what's normal for your own parent, and then predicts that your parent may fall just from muscle weakness or a change in their base behavior. These devices that you always see on TV, I've fallen, I can't get up, they have this sort of a shame factor that nobody wants to wear them, but now there's this gamification of health. Are you integrating with any of the Jawbone or the Apple Watches or any of these other devices that are not your own standalone device?
We're not, but I do think that's an opportunity to help those that are aging in place. 20% of our, different stat, about a third of our customers are actually 50 and over. And so they will start to age in place as they get older. And it's an opportunity for Canary and other companies like Canary to provide services and technology to kind of monitor those folks that are getting older and may ultimately start living alone and need the assistance of people or technology to be more independent.
Okay, great. So we're just about out of time, but I want to, two quick questions that if you guys can answer in one-sentence answers. What are you most excited about in this Internet of Eyes and or visual sensor sector that's going to happen in 15 years or 10 years or sometime in the future that says, wow, I can't wait for...
My favorite would be augmented memory.
Which is, in one sentence?
Which is, where did I meet this person last?
Okay, perfect. Jan?
For me, it's a confluence of three areas, which is computer vision and machine learning and robotics. So in 10 years, or in 15 years, we'll see a lot of new, very interesting robots that have capabilities that we never dreamt of.
Like what? In one sentence.
People helping in your home, like a butler.
Okay, a butler. It's going to happen. Okay.
I think the conscious home, is something that is definitely achievable in the next 15 years. And I think cameras will help allow the computers to get the context that they need of what's going on. But it'll be the combination of all these different signals that are coming in that'll provide all the context so that hopefully your home will be smart enough to really understand what you want or need, because today that's just not the case.
Okay, and so the last question before we go to networking, and there's a lot of topics I'm sure people will hunt you down and talk in more detail. Each of you... there's a lot of smart people in the audience that want to start businesses. What would you suggest they focus on that would be great for the industry, separate from what you guys are focusing on? What's another thing that leveraging visual sensors that you can't wait that somebody starts working on? Go, Chris.
I would say the advice to anyone looking to go into entrepreneurship is be very self-aware of what you're not good at. Because you're not going to be able to do it alone. You're going to have to find partners that are exceptional at the things that you're not good at.
Great. Jan?
Yeah, I thought about this for a while. I couldn't come up with a good answer. I think because I'm a researcher at heart, so for me it's hardest to tell people what businesses they should start.
Or even from your space, what should somebody work on as research?
I think pick hard and interesting problems.
What's the difference from hard?
Something that people haven't solved for a long time. Like computer vision was one of those problems, right? Which now finally it's starting to work because of machine learning. Yeah. So I think pick hard and difficult problems.
Gail?
I think taking the full systems approach is the answer to success. You need to have something that works top to bottom and was made to work together.
Fantastic. Round of applause for this panel. Thank you very much.